Welcome to Voices of Hope. I'm your host, Omar Kenyatta Clark, and this is a brave space, a space where vulnerability meets courage, and where real stories of resilience come to life. Each episode will bring you powerful conversations with people who've faced some of life's hardest challenges and turned them into sources of strength. We believe each story has power to heal, to inspire, and to remind us that we're never alone in this journey. Whether you're seeking hope, looking for inspiration, or simply need to know someone else has walked through fire and made it out, this is your space. Welcome to Voices of Hope. I'm your host, Omar Kenyatta Clark, and today's guest is John D. Lynn. He is a national award-winning public speaking professor and a 7-continent, 125 country traveler whose work bridges communication, mental health, and human connection. He is the author of Eli and Me, a new book that explores how New York Giants legend Eli Manning exemplifies emotional steadiness, humility, and resilience, offering a powerful yet unexpected model for strong mental health in high pressure environments. John serves as the New York State Board Director of NAMI and is deeply committed to reducing stigma through education and storytelling. His work is also a tribute to his beloved grandmother, with whom he shared an exceptionally close bond. John strives to honor her memory by helping others be as close to their loved ones as he was to his grandmother. John, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Omar, and for the wonderful introduction.
Yes. Thank you for being here. And just I want to tell our audience just a little bit of how we met. I had went to a NAMI meeting, and people were sharing their stories. And John shared his story, and his story inspired me so much that I just had to ask him, to be on the show. So I'm hoping that we can get a little bit into that and hear some of that story, so our audience can get a little bit of what I experienced from hearing you share your story, which was so powerful. But before we get there, let's just tell me more about where you are now, what you're doing now. I know you say you're a National Award public speaking professor. Just tell me about what you're doing now, your accomplishments. Just go into it.
Oh, I just want to say, because it's off the top of my head right now, I'm thinking about my father. He passed away 6 months ago, so my headspace is a bit emotional because of the holiday season. Oh, thank you, Omar. Yeah. But on my mind, I'm thinking I've been to 48 states. I took my mom on a road trip for 35 states this past summer after he passed away. So in my mind, I'm thinking Alaska and I'm thinking Hawaii, because those are the only two left. And I'm going to take my mom there, and my dad will be there in spirit. So with the semester winding down right now, I'm just thinking winter break, and winter break.
Yeah, I get that. I definitely get that. Yeah. So, so just tell me about your role as a professor and how your work has made that combination between mental health and human connection and whatnot. Tell us where you are now.
Thanks, Omar. Well, it's been 16 years since I've started teaching, and with the pandemic already being 5 years going on 6 now, I've transitioned to be a lot more of an online public speaking professor. And so what we're doing now, because we've never met in person before, this is only the second time we've met virtually, but I do find that I'm able to connect with you, and likewise. It's so important that we're able to make that connection online, because if you can't make this connection through camera on Zoom, you might not have a chance to meet someone in person these days. And so my focus has been really to make sure that people don't have the self-consciousness of speaking virtually because that is a big fear that I see that a lot of students and people in our generation have. They're not used to the technology. They become more self-conscious because now like you're suddenly seeing yourself all the time.
Yeah.
And we're not built that way. But now we have to learn how to communicate this way authentically so we don't feel like we're just putting on a beauty filter on Instagram or something. So I think in regards to being able to overcome the next barrier for communication, we have to start virtually, and I'm trying to create that environment for people.
Great, great. Yeah, thank you for sharing that. Um, yeah, I just want to say, yeah, I do feel that connection meeting you virtually, and I hope that at some point we can meet in person too. Um, but yeah, how do you start to kind of like break down those walls and foster that communication, even if it is virtually?
My late professor who passed away, it's a theme, but you want to remember the memories, right, of the people who definitely have inspired you. And he told me you have to start with where the audience is right now. So where is the landscape of where people are with online communication? It's this right now. People don't have their cameras on, right? That's
Right.
that's how they're used to talking. I mean, they
Yeah.
and now you don't know what I'm doing, right? I could be doing anything right now. You have no idea. But
No idea.
people like that secrecy. They like the lack of accountability, that they don't have to be so self-conscious. And as I cannot see myself now, I feel a bit more free because I don't have to judge myself for how I look, right? And so in the first day of class, allow people to just not have their cameras on. And in fact, I also let them not have their microphones on either. It's just a complete texting day because that's what we're used to. We send trillions of texts, but we barely have any phone calls anymore. And
Yeah,
so
that's
I
true.
start the first day just like that. And then when they say, hey, this is a public speaking class, why are we not speaking? And I said, we are. This is just the way you speak. But
Yeah.
let's make sure we turn on our mics. And then when they feel that they want to turn on their cameras, then it becomes the camera reveal. And so we build the hype on it, but I want them to know that it's strategic because this is how the society has become. So let's break those barriers. Let's build new walls and build better bridges to connect with people.
Wow, I love that strategy. I never thought of it that way. So you kind of sort of ease them into this to a point where you're building that connection virtually without the faces, without any pressure, pretty much. And you kind of ease them into it to the point where, all right, now we're going to put our cameras on and reveal ourselves and sort of, you know, build that communication.
It's a privilege to be able to do what we're doing now. This was impossible decades ago, right? And so oftentimes when we have these privileges to communicate, we fear that connection because of the vulnerability of being judged or coming
Hmm.
off incorrectly. But we still have to believe that it's an opportunity to connect with someone and an opportunity for people to get to know you. So you have to have that fortitude and confidence within yourself. And we try to build up that suspense and that feeling that, hey, this is a gift that we have this in 2025 to do this. So let's not be afraid of it. Let's embrace it.
Yes, yes, definitely, definitely. Um, Yeah, so you know that Voices of Hope here, we're a brave space. And this is a platform where we share our stories of resilience. So I was wondering if it would be all right if you can share a story of resilience of a life challenge or a mental health challenge that you had to overcome to get to where you are now, to be this award-winning professor that you are now.
I would start by saying that in all our lives, we're very performative, no matter what our job is. You know, when you're a boss, you might have to be really stern and mean. But then when you're with your kids at home, you can be the playful father, for example. And then, of course, once you're in a business call, you got to throw on a suit and you got to be performative again. But being performative has to not feel fake. You have to feel like you're yourself. One of the challenges that was difficult for me at first was when I realized that the mental background, the mental illness that I have, I was diagnosed with major depressive disorder when I was 19 and then type 2 bipolar when I was 22. But I started being a professor when I was 25. And sometimes I would just feel, just really out of it. just really sad. And I didn't want to pretend to be happy in class when I felt depressed. And so what I realized was one of the important elements is you don't want to repress a feeling that's natural. You want to see how you can work with it to become more genuine. And so on days where I felt more depressed, I might become more heartfelt in class and deliver more messages that are more personal. And on days where I might be more energetic on the high end, that's when they're like, wow, this guy's funny. Like he's just animated. And that way I was being true to myself with my emotions. I wasn't trying to be fake and happy when I felt miserable inside. And I wasn't trying to, be really, heartfelt and touchy when I wasn't feeling that either. I would say it's really important to be in tune with what we feel and why we feel that way so that we can express that naturally.
Yes, yes. Yeah, when you bring up that authenticity, that I feel like is so important. Excuse me. Because there was a point in time where I felt like I couldn't be myself. A little bit about my background. I was in a clinical psychology doctoral program, being a therapist, and I felt like I couldn't really be who I was because I had this background, I had this diagnosis, and I wasn't able to share my story with people who I work with or even my colleagues. And um, I feel like that really had a detrimental impact on my own mental health. And when I decided to go public with the mental health, that helped me so much and gave me this sort of freedom to be who I want to be. And from that, came everything else with the podcast and the speaking that I do. Was it like a similar experience like for you?
Oh, yeah. It's that weight that you feel off your shoulders all of a sudden because from what you're expressing here, this is a part of us, right? Our mental health, our journey, and it's something that's a part of us so embedded and deep that we want to share that because it becomes a passion. And when you have to hide it or you can't go fully into it, it stifles our life almost. It's almost like we can't move forward. I did something similar with you at about a couple of years ago. I just said, you know what? On LinkedIn, I don't care about my 7 continent, 125 country travelers. I don't care about my professor thing. I just want people to know that I was able to do these things not in spite of mental illness, but because of mental illness. Because
Oh, I like that.
if it wasn't for everything that happened, I wouldn't be this place today. And so I,
Yes.
I wrote on my LinkedIn, John D. Lynn, major depressive disorder, type 2 bipolar, 7 continent traveler, public speaking professor. And that's what it was.
Yeah, I really like how you flip that perspective where you're saying you're not in spite of the mental illness because of it. It's that it's part of formed you into who you are today. I feel like I'm the same way because I wouldn't be doing this if I wasn't bipolar. If I didn't have the experiences that I had that shaped me into who I am now. Yeah.
Absolutely. This is what it's about, right? Empowerment. And empowerment has to come from a place where you can continue to empower. It has to be an internal force, not something external. It can't be just something you saw on social media that you like, so you just hashtag and share. It's got to come from within your heart.
Yeah. So how were you able to make that perspective shift and build that mindset that you have now?
Well, there's always the slippery slope of when I have money, I'm good.
Hmm.
But when you have that money, you want more money. And when you want more money, you want more money, you want more money. Same thing with validation of our own selves, with what other people might say, and with our own success. And so one of the struggles that I had, and this is definitely understandable from, my parents' perspective and coming from a Taiwanese culture, is, why do you want to share something to the public or some people that could be potentially used as a weakness? Mental health issues can be seen as a weakness. It's definitely not seen as a power. That's why we kind of flip it, right? And
Hmm.
so they're like, why do you want to go public about you have a mental illness? People can use this against you. And of course they can. And they told me, if you happen to throw a piece of chalk at the chalkboard right now, you're just a professor who's angry. But if you throw a chalk at the chalkboard after you tell people about your mental illness, it's because you're crazy. And that's a huge difference that you have to live with. At some point, though, I kind of realized, there can always be more success. There can always be more money. But if it's going to come, I want to do it my way, which is to let people know who I am. And that requires the whole story. That requires the background. And so
Right.
that helped me decide, I think it's time now.
Yeah. So where did that courage come from to be true to yourself and go public and live the life that you wanted to live?
Well, I thank you for saying it's courageous. It's
Yeah.
also a part of releasing yourself from the burden. You hold something
Hmm.
in long enough, it's not courageous that you're letting it go. It's just more like you just have to unleash it for yourself, right? So there's
Yeah.
that not courageous part, but there's like I guess in some way, the selfish part. Like, I don't want to carry this anymore. I'm just going to, you're hiding something in your pocket so no one sees it, right?
Yeah.
And then you
Yeah.
just reveal it because you're just so tired of hiding in the pocket over there. So that's one aspect. But the courageous part, I would say, a lot of it stems from my former students, really.
Hmm.
When I was in college at 19, I was trying to hide my mental illness to everybody. I couldn't even I couldn't even tell one person that I had been diagnosed with mental illness, and I had that define me. And then today I have students in class giving speeches about their conditions and how they're trying to overcome it. So you can see the real courage that's coming from my students.
Mm.
And then over the time I say, hey, I'm surprised that when I tell these students that, I have these mental struggles, they tell me that I'm the only person they know that has experienced this, because their parents and their friends and whoever they talk to, they don't understand because they don't have the same thing. And so I started to see that I can just who I am in my capacity, I can somehow inspire.
Yeah. I'm definitely connected with everything that you're saying right now. Um, to the point where you were saying that um it kind of felt like a burden that you were holding in um things and being secretive and not telling people about your mental illness. Um I have felt that too. Um I didn't tell anybody about what I was going through. Because I felt, because of course the stigma, was heavy,
Mm-hmm.
and that's heavy to carry on your shoulders. And then being alone, the loneliness for not being able to connect with people on that level is heavy, you know. And for me, at least, it was that um it came to a point where it got so heavy, and that I couldn't hide it anymore, and for me, at least, I was being hospitalized, and I would disappear for months at a time. So I couldn't hide it anymore, because people would start to wonder um where I am, you know.
Yeah.
And I was talking with someone else, and they were like, the what they focused on was that there were actually people that noticed I was gone, you know.
Mm-hmm.
So having people like that in my life who noticed was a big help. And when I did, reveal everything, I had a good experience from it, because I told my best friend first, and he said, you can tell me whatever you want to tell me. If it's stuff you don't want to tell me, that's okay too. But no matter what, I'm here for you, and whatever you need, I have your back. And that really empowered me, to share more and whatnot. Um, but I don't want to, talk about, too much about my experience. I just want to hear more, about your experience, and what was that like when you started to open up.
Thanks. Well, you mentioned, Omar, that's your best friend, right? He's your best friend
Yeah,
for a reason. That's
yeah,
because he reacted that way. For everyone else who's not your best friend, they may react differently or worse.
Yeah, yeah.
Otherwise, we would have millions of best friends, right? Uh, it was tough. It was tough. First telling people that I missed school because I had a cold, and then I missed school. There was a running joke. I mentioned this in my first TED talk about my disappearance, that I would miss a birthday party one year and I would say, sorry, I had a flat tire, right? And I missed another birthday party. I said, sorry, I have a flat tire. And I would say I had so many flat tires that my friend would just say, you must be an 18-wheel truck driver. There's just too many flat tires. So it's hard to conceal. But I remember specifically, I had told one friend that I'd known since elementary school. And essentially he said he didn't want to be my friend anymore. And the reason, I completely understand. I mean, you're in college because you want to strive, you want to be great. You can't have dead weight carrying you down. And then, it's like a man down, you're no longer able to focus. So I completely understand that perspective. I don't hold any bad will at all over there, but that just goes to show that people can be afraid to let other people know about how they really feel because of the reactions that could potentially make you lose that relationship. To this day, I still regret. There was this one girl that I really really liked, and I still to this day I never told her that I have depression and I have bipolar. And if I did, instead of just pushing her away, who would have known what could have happened, right? And I don't want to live with that weight of not being authentic and true to who I am, because it is a part of me. It becomes me. I don't want that to be a barrier to any type of relationships that I could potentially have in personal life and business life and everything.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's such a hard thing too, because I've had struggled with that in my own life. Just yesterday, I was talking to someone and I told them that, my diagnosis, and automatic rejection, you know? So, that stigma is real. Um, so, I want to go a little bit deeper into the stigma later on.
Sure.
And I'll table that, for now, but we'll get to that a little bit later. Um, but like, if you could speak to like your younger self, um, when you were holding all that weight, what would you say?
It's not that bad.
Yeah.
That's what people don't want to hear. But having been diagnosed for almost half of my life now, it always is not that bad. It is so bad in the moment though. And that's what people need to think about. When someone says that you're depressed, someone says, "Oh, it's not that bad." You don't know what it's like for me and, mom and dad to grow up and in this environment. That's totally true, perhaps. But that doesn't take away that in this moment now, this is the most severe feeling that I have and I cannot shake it. But it doesn't have to last if you can take care of yourself and you can get the treatment and everything, because that feeling is not something that's rational. Perhaps it's something that's going on in your biochemistry that's making you feel certain ways. And I would just have told myself, John, it's not that bad, don't panic. Millions of people have been in this situation as well. I know you don't want to be the millionth and one, but here you are and you will be okay.
Yeah. Yeah, that's deep. That's really deep. And while you were talking, this image kind of came to my mind of how you were saying how some things just aren't as bad as you make them, or how your mind makes them out to be, right? And it gave me this image of like, all right, there's a bear chasing you, right? And behind you, the bear, and more you run, it gets bigger and bigger. But if you look back at it, it's really just a teddy bear. you know
Sure.
so it's like our mind and the pressure we put on ourselves makes things a lot bigger than they actually are in reality. you know um yeah, so I just want to shift the conversation just a
Sure.
little bit and get to that point of the stigma. um how have you experienced stigma?
I could answer that in different perspectives, but I'll start with the Taiwanese perspective because
Okay.
that's, I can't change that, right? So that's one aspect of that. It's difficult. I have talked about it in other venues, but not as much as I have an opportunity to here. So thank you. I have 42 first cousins. Okay. And I have an older sister, and then there's me. So there's 44 of us born in my generation, both on my mom and dad's side. And I'm the youngest one. So I'm the baby. And I
Wow.
remember during Thanksgiving, at times when I was younger, I remember, and I had just, very blurry memories as a kid. But I remember I couldn't even walk down the hallway because there were so many feet everywhere. There were so many
Mm.
people in my house. And then as I got older, I was able to see better and I could navigate the feet. But then as I got even older, I started to realize, wow, there's actually less people here. And then, my family members, aunts and uncles says, oh yeah, busy with school, busy with work, just busy in general. Everyone's just kind of busy, right? We are living in a society where we pride ourselves in how hard we work or how many hours we put in the office. But I realized later on, they didn't come because they had mental illness. No one was willing to talk about it. And so when we brothers and sisters talking about, oh, how's your kid? How's my nephew? How's my niece? Like, oh, they're doing good. They're just busy working hard, But that is not the conversation. So the stigma in Taiwanese culture, as it is in so many, is just we don't really talk about it. Let's just focus on the positive. And the positive doesn't tell the story. So the stigma is definitely real because to them, the problem doesn't even exist. Right. So that's a big part to definitely hit home on. And then, of course, when you hit them with the actual one, it's more like, well, it's not that bad. You don't know how bad it was for us, et cetera, et cetera. And so there's like, you're damn if you do, damn if you don't when you share. And that's the double-headed monster of the stigma that can arise not just in family, but also with your friends, because we don't have as many best friends as you have, right? Otherwise, everyone would be your best friend. And it happens at work too, because we either don't get promoted, we get demoted, we get fired, or we get pushed aside.
Yeah, that's real. That's real. It's real life. Discrimination is real too. That's comes from the stigma. But I want to thank you for sharing that cultural perspective as well. You were saying there were more perspectives that you had on the stigma. You could go into that as well.
Well, from an international travel perspective, and I know the statistics can be really alarming about how many people are afflicted by mental illness and how many lives, unfortunately, could be lost due to it, or how many people struggle a lifetime, how early they struggle with it. And that could be pretty hard to take as an American, right? But I've traveled globally and I've seen places where there are no statistics taken because you just don't exist as a human if you exhibit any sort of mental illness. I've seen people on the streets and they're homeless, right? In X country. But then I see other people in the street. I'm like, I don't think oh no, they're not homeless. They're worse. They have mental illness. So their family just put him there until he can feel better. I'm like, how long he's been there? He's like, oh, I don't know, 6 months. So that's rough that's a bigger stigma. That's not even stigma. That's not even discrimination. That's inhumane.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, really.
Mm-hmm.
Wow. Yeah. Thank you for sharing that perspective as well, getting a bigger landscape of the stigma worldwide. Yeah. So I think that's a big thing. Do you have any other perspective that you wanted to bring up as well?
Yeah, of course. I would say, both of us are men, right? And I've realized through my time in mental health organizations, I don't see it myself, right? You see all these TikTok videos of maybe a dog growing up with a bunch of cats, right? And so the dog acts like a cat and doesn't realize that it's actually a dog because you're blinded to who you are. I don't really see race when I talk about anything really, but then or even gender, but people remind me all the time, you're a man talking about mental illness. I'm like, I know. Like, you know how rare that is? Like 95+% of people are all women, which leaves you with just 5% of men who are willing and comfortable to come to these mental health groups. And so the perspective really is, you know, in our society, in American culture and other cultures, what does it mean to be a man? Clearly does not mean talking about mental health, because that's not what men do. And so that's another perspective. And if you magnitude blow it up by 100%, most Asians don't talk about mental health. I've had many talks that were specific for groups that were more heavily Asian, for example,
Mhm.
and then they just don't have their camera on and they change their name because they're like, sorry, you know, I don't want the stigma. The stigma was so strong that they couldn't even write their full name on a Zoom call. And I respect that completely, but that's just another perspective to give to you.
Yeah, it's so real, you know, even though um like stigma isn't like a physical thing we can see, but we can see its effects and behaviors and you know and thoughts and how people interact with each other. Um, so it does have such a big effect. Were there any other perspectives before I ask you another question? Just want to
I
make sure I get it all
Yeah,
out.
I got to throw in the Eli Manning perspective, man.
Oh, go for it. I want to hear
I
that
mean,
too.
you know, you're talking about the macho man, right? The
Yeah,
macho man perspective. I mean, you're talking about football, right? What it really means to be a man. There really is no space oftentimes to talk about your emotions. You got to man up, right? You got to play football.
yeah,
There was a case in the year 2000 in the Super Bowl. Oakland Raiders offensive lineman Bart Robbins, and I could get it right exactly, but I wrote about this many years ago. He had a mental breakdown and he wasn't able to play, and so you know everyone just said, how do you not play? You see me with like 55 broken bones in my hands and fingers. I'm playing, and essentially it was just not the manly thing to do. And so you know I mentioned Eli Manning because I feel like I know that he's the quintessential role model for how to make sure you do have good mental health because he's able to avoid all the other traps. Why do we fall into mental health problems? Well, there's too much pressure, right? Eli Manning played in New York. There's no more pressure area than here, and he handled it. You know, why do we fall into mental health issues? It's because we don't get what we wanted, right? Eli Manning lost a lot here, especially in the later part of his career, but he handled his losses just as graciously and humbly as he did his 2 Super Bowl wins. And so, you know, with him, you have a steady, fast demeanor that he's true to himself. And one last point I'll just say is oftentimes within the family, we don't feel so great about ourselves because we are always compared to our more successful brother or sister. Eli was always compared to Peyton for so long, but he
yeah,
didn't let that bother him. You know, he wasn't the raw guy. He was the easy Eli. And so he showed us you can be okay playing in a big market, in a sport, being compared to someone else. Mental health, check, so long as you're yourself. And that's why Eli Manning was such an inspiration to me when I was 19, because that's when he first came in the league, and how he's still an inspiration today, even after he retired. And so my
yeah,
book is really trying to showcase that because people just think about the sport. You had to think about the person and the way someone handled that sport.
yes, yes. That was so powerful, and it's so interesting that this is coming up. Because I did an interview earlier today actually, and
You
that
interviewed Eli
theme.
Manning? If you
No,
Eli,
not.
if you okay, if you
I wish
interviewed
I
him,
could
you
have
gotta
him
have
on the
a
show. Maybe you could give me a connection, get Eli on the show.
okay.
But I was interviewing someone, and the idea of what is it to be a man now, you
Mm,
know, and we have all these I call them false role models where they're portraying how to be a man, but they're really portraying toxic masculinity
mm.
and getting people to follow them in a way um that's not good, you know. And I got that perspective from him from on what does it mean to be a man from his perspective. And I know this is going a little bit off script. I wasn't expecting to ask you this, but a lot of men do follow me and follow this podcast. So that would be great just to get a perspective from your lens. What does it mean to be a man?
To me, it means to be vulnerable, that is really important because you would have to share what's going on to not carry the burden yourself. And that might be, you know, opposite of what people think, right? The man carries the burden, like, that he's got to be strong. Don't let other people know that you're struggling inside. That might make everyone crumble. You're the leader. But I find that you have to lead for your entire life. It's not just a now moment because yeah, maybe if you're playing a game, right? You don't have to let the team know that they're nervous if you feel like that's going to mess everyone up. But in a game of life, it's not a game. And you have to be vulnerable. You have to allow yourself to be you and not be this performative idea of what a man should be.
Yeah. And how does that vulnerability help?
It allows me at least to be in the moment of how I feel so I could fully have all the emotions be in process so that I can move on.
So men do have emotions.
I do.
Me too. But I think that just needs to be put out there.
Hey,
there's like this stereotype.
If that makes me an android, I don't want to be a man then. Yeah, I have tons of emotions. I might be more emotional than the typical woman perhaps because I'm so in tune with my emotions, but because of that it makes me a man.
Yes. And like just go a little bit deeper with this. Like as a man, how do you express your emotions?
Well, that comes in with the public speaking ability. I try to express it articulately. The caveman would go rah, rah, and just like start breaking the computer. Through the cultivation of speech, I will have to A, understand what I'm feeling, B, understand further, like, why do I feel why I feel? And so I always try to understand not why I might be angry, but what's causing the anger, right? And so I would say if a man's job is to know things, like know how to fix, a sink, for example, or know how to fix, a broken car, we're all broken, so we got to know how to fix ourselves.
I'm just going to let that sit there. We're gonna let that sit there for a minute. That was powerful. That was deep. Yeah.
And thank you. That's I never said that line before. I said some lines before because you want to stick with them, but that's something new that you helped me come up with now. And it sucks because I don't know how to fix a sink. I don't know how to fix a car, but I know how to fix myself. And hopefully, hopefully for people that will be enough.
Yeah. So that public speaking, it kind of worked as like an outlet for you, being able to understand your feelings and be able to articulate them. Because I see like a lot of times on TV or in media, you see a man get angry and then he's punching a wall or breaking something, and that kind of creates this stereotype. But now you're saying that your outlet, you're able to articulate and not do those things.
Yeah, actually, about breaking things, Omar, I'm not sure if you ever went to one of these. I never have, but I'm sure you heard of smash rooms. You take a baseball bat and you start smashing. I would love my first time in a smash room to be with you if you want to go, because so there are sometimes that words cannot take out the anger. I just want to take a baseball bat and I just want to smash an Apple laptop.
Yeah, count me in.
Okay, so we'll work it out during the winter break for sure.
All right.
Did I answer your question? I forgot what your question was. I just thought smash room when you're talking about breaking the wall.
No, that was the great answer. I would take that. But I want to bring us back to the stigma that we were talking about earlier. What do you think are ways that we can start to push back against that stigma?
That is a tough one, and I'll tell you why. When you water down the stigma too much, then it becomes like it's not even there also. For example, for instance, when a person says depression is real, the stigma would be like, no, it's not, let's say, right? And then there's a pushback to it. But when you were to then say depression is real, and people say, I know, I'm depressed too. I'm depressed too. And then on social media, everyone starts saying that they're depressed, then it kind of just makes depression not real again, right? Because
Mhm.
depression is a real thing. Global warming is not just, oh, I feel a little cold today, let's say, right? It's like, whoa, there's this whole bigger thing. So to saturate stigma too much becomes a disservice for everybody, because then everyone has it when they don't necessarily do. So that's the hard part with combating stigma. It's to be able to do it in a calculated way so it doesn't become careless.
Yeah, that I connected with what you just said. Because I do see that happening in a way, with like the anxiety. I'll just bring up anxiety, right? Or we're saying, "Oh, I'm anxious, I'm anxious, I'm anxious." They get all these songs, you know, talking
They
about anxiety. I'm like,
that anxiety
it's
song, I
not,
don't know who sings it, but that
you know,
anxiety, that song was so catchy on the road trip. I just kept, my mom was like, "Oh, it's the anxiety song again."
yeah,
Who
so you
sings
know
that
what I'm
song?
talking about.
Yeah,
Yeah,
no, that song is so catchy. I don't know who sings that song, but you're absolutely right. Yeah. When everything's anxious, everyone's anxious, and then suddenly anxiety just becomes, just another thing like candy.
right. So I guess I'm starting to think about like pushing back against that stigma, but then also giving the mental illness the respect it deserves. Like I do
Yes.
that. I talk about like I have a brain health episode where I talk about how mental health is a real medical condition. You know, because like you were saying, how people say they're depressed, but really they may just be sad. But depression is different from just sadness. You know.
Yeah. Now that I think about it from a broader landscape, because it's not just about, depression or just like moods, right? Uh, yeah, ADHD, people are like, oh, I can't focus. Right now, suddenly you dilute the ADHD feel, or, anxiety as well. And then, of course, the depression or the mood swings. And it's not just about one aspect of how someone feels, but we have to cultivate the way we communicate about mental health from an ego eye perspective as well. And that's one of the missions and journeys that I'm trying to navigate now for myself in my own life, but also in terms of society.
Right. Yeah. So can you just tell us more about that the communication part of things and how does that work with, the stigma and whatnot?
I would say for the listeners here, what everyone can do for themselves is to make sure that you don't saturate these words within your own loved one circles. So if you really do feel a certain way, make sure you let your loved ones and your friends know, but don't say it so much that it becomes like, yeah, kind of like the boy who cried wolf almost, right? So when that anxiety really kicks in, make sure that they really know, and it's not just one of those times that you use it. So in other words, be really careful with your words. Don't take it lightly, because they are meant to be serious.
Right. Couldn't have said it better myself. That was very well said. Thank you for that perspective. Um, so we're winding down. Um, so I just want to ask you just a couple more questions before we end for today. Um, these are the big questions that
Okay.
for this podcast.
We
And
got a drink of
it's
water as we
yeah,
prepare.
go get ready for it. These are the big ones.
All right. Big question number one.
What gives you hope?
I would, and this is again, I would say, to see my grandmother and my father one day, and to tell them about all the cool things that I've done since they left this world here. I don't want to see my dad and tell him, hey, it was, are we allowed to curse on this podcast?
Go for
I don't want to tell my dad, same shit, different day. Same shit, different year. You missed absolutely nothing in my life, Dad. I want to test my potential and the impact that I can make on people's lives when it comes to communication, when it comes to mental health, when it comes to seeing the world, so I can have these conversations with my dad. And I don't know what happens in the afterlife. No one really knows, but I hope that if I see my dad and my grandma one day, I can tell them all the cool things that they may have seen from above, but they missed here on earth. And that's the hope I have.
Yeah. Yeah, that's beautiful to have that hope, you know. Um, and the last question I'm going to have for you today, what would you like to say to someone who is struggling? Maybe they had a similar background as you. Maybe they're from your culture. Maybe they're facing stigma and they don't know what to do. And they're looking for hope. What would you say to them?
I love how you said looking for, because I think what happens is when you are hit with a mental illness or a mental condition or a place where you don't want to be, you feel down or depressed or dejected because you're looking at what you could have had. And now you realize that you can't have it or you may never have it. I would say to them, look at where you are. There's going to be something better for you. If I didn't have the mental illness, I would at best be a very average, unhappy doctor. That's assuming that I got through medical school and everything, which is a big assumption. But I definitely would not be in public speaking right now with the ability to try my best to articulate as I do now and see the impact of words. And I definitely would not have been able to travel and see the world. There is something that is better for you if you look that direction and stop looking at where you thought you would be.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Thank you for that. Thank you. I think someone just heard that and they just took it to heart. So thank you for that, John D. Lynn. I appreciate
Yeah,
your time.
thank you.
Where can people find you? Where can they get the book, Eli and Me? And tell us just a little bit, about that.
My LinkedIn is John D. Lynn. So stay tuned for that for updates on the Eli Manning book. My Instagram is John D. Lynn Speaks, and you can find all my travel photos there as well. And I definitely will be posting about Eli Manning as well. I haven't made a social media post in 3 years, actually, since my trip in from South America. And I feel great because you're talking about detoxing, man, 3 years of detox right here. I'm 3 years sober from social media. But when it's something really important, right? Like the Eli Manning book, I will post about it. And that's what I mean by, make sure you know the impact of your words. So when you do say, hey, I'm really anxious right now. I need your help, I need your help, Mom. They'll know that you do. And so when that social media post drops, you'll know, oh, John D. Lynn has something very important to say.
Yeah. Yeah. So, John, thank you again for joining us here on Voices of Hope. And John, you are a voice of hope.
Thank you, Omar. I love your voice. It's not just the microphone. I love your voice. I love the tenor of it and the strength it holds and also the compassion. And let's hope that we can, let's not just hope, but let's do it. Let's meet up sometime for a meal and go to that smash room.
Yeah, that sounds good for me. We're going to put it in the calendar.
All right. Thank you so much.
Yes, thank you. So this has been another episode of Voices of Hope. I'm Omar Kenyatta Clark. And until next time, let's rise. Thank you so much for joining us on this episode of Voices of Hope. Your time and attention mean the world, and we hope today's conversation has inspired and encouraged you. If you enjoyed today's episode, don't forget to like, follow, and subscribe so you never miss a moment of hope. We're all part of this community, and your voice matters. If you're ready to share your own story of resilience and become a voice of hope, reach out to me directly at omarkenyattaclark@gmail.com. I'd love to hear from you. And of course, stay tuned for our next episode. We've got more powerful stories and inspiring voices coming your way, and I can't wait for you to be a part of it.